Good evening, everybody. I am Martius Felius, and as you all know, I've been wanting to have this conversation. Over the weekend, my sister passed away, and it's given me some interesting perspective on how a man would handle, how men do handle the death of close relatives or family members or even friends. I have a list of guests that will be showing up. Currently, I am joined by two very illustrious people. We have Keklof,
Hello.
and I've already forgotten how you told me you wanted your name pronounced.
Zarson, or call me CZ.
CZ. Well, we'll go with CZ. And we already have a Bloodwing in the chat. Hey, Bloodwing. All right. So I'll go through a little bit of what I've been thinking about, and then you guys can add whatever you like. So I really, being the oldest remaining male, I found myself not able to cry on someone's shoulder or be able to mourn properly with my family because if I lose my shit and break down crying, then they have no strong shoulder to cry on. So I've just kind of noticed I've had to be rather robotic and emotionless for their sake.
Yeah, I believe that. I've done that before.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand that. I myself am an only child, but I've experienced my mom passing away a little over a decade ago. But more recently, my grandma and my uncle both passing away within a couple months of each other. It's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, my mom passed away about 10 years ago. It'd be 11 this August. And it was very sudden. She died of cancer that she found out 6 weeks beforehand. So we had like no time to prep or anything like that. And what happened basically is I'm the baby of the family. I mean, I got two older brothers who are 9 and 13 years apart from me. And so when I was growing up, I was practically an almost the only child. My brothers would be there, but they were in their teenage years already. So I was a mama's boy. And whenever she went, I shut down. I mean, and it was my mom, so of course I cried, but since then it's like I shut that part off. Like, I had about 4 years prior to that, I had one of my best friends died in front of me, and that was devastating. And then my mom passed, and that was even worse. But after that, I realized that I don't have my mom around to tell me it's okay. So I gotta buckle down and say tough.
Yes, sir. And we are joined by my internet friend who flung poo.
How's it going?
Hi there.
Hey there.
Hey,
Any
Let me know how my mic level is.
I'm sorry?
Let me know how my mic level is.
You are good. You are good. You're not blaring in my ear, and I can hear you on par with the rest of the guys. Are you or before we get into the real meat, do you have any interest or any stories you'd like to share about maybe passings in your family?
Well, as I mentioned to you in Discord, before, by the age of 25, I had lost my parents almost exactly 3 years apart from one another. So, both were different experiences, mostly because in one situation, other people were basically taking care of funeral arrangements and whatnot. And in the other situation, I kind of had to step up more and help out with that. So, one gave me more time to just grieve, and the other one just kind of kept me occupied. And, I just did what I had to do and grieved for that loss, later on.
Yeah. Which is the meat of what I've been going through. I can't grieve just yet. I have to, let my other sisters and my mother and especially my nieces and nephews grieve first. I have to be their rock, as it were, while they grieve, and then my grief can come later.
Yeah, I know it's a very slow thing because I remember because obviously my mom passing, she was actually killed when I was around 8 or 9 by her ex-fiance.
Oh,
I'm
And
sorry to
I
hear
was
that.
very, yeah, it was very funny because it was almost like, before I went to bed, because she had a restraining order on him, but they had to renew it. So when you renew a restraining order, you have to like kind of hang out with them for a day. And they looked like they were complete friends, joking around, being buddy buddy, before I went to bed, and then you wake up and then all that happens. But I remember that it being very hard to, grieve for my mom because I was too as mom was blind. That was pretty devastating. But I remember that because I grew up in Vegas, and a lot of people are kind of like more apathetic to that kind of thing here. So I had to kind of just toughen up and kind of live like that. So by the time my grandma passed away a few years ago, around the time I was like 17 or 18, I remember I was sitting in at the funeral, and my family was obviously crying because they haven't really lost anyone, since my mom, and then before then haven't since my grandpa passed away like over 20 years ago. And I remember being there and just being like that one person who wasn't crying but was like actually trying to lift everyone else up, like going, okay, yeah, this person died, but it's not the end of the world. It's going to happen to us eventually, so we have to make the most of it now. We can't like dwell on it, because that's what happened to my uncle. Like when my grandma passed away, he found out that his liver was failing because he was a heavy drinker and stuff like that. He ended up killing himself because he didn't want to die from
Yeah,
obviously failing liver.
yeah, he essentially euthanized himself. Yes, sir.
Yeah, because he didn't want to. And I mean, I understand that because, he basically looked at, well, I'm going to die a slow, excruciating death, or I could end it myself, which I don't blame him for that. Like, I probably would have done the same thing because that honestly sounds terrible because our grandma was kept alive like way longer than I feel she should have because my family didn't want to let her go. But she's had like 2 strokes and she was like on life support. So I'm like, dude, like, why would you let someone live like that?
Yeah.
Like, don't prolong it.
That's pretty brutal. I'm sorry to hear it.
Yeah, it is.
We are joined by the Batman.
Hey,
Hey,
Hi there.
Batman, if I remember, you had you had a couple of stories that you shared with me in DMs. If you wouldn't mind sharing them here.
Well, I'll try. Well, I'll start off with my mother. Seeing as this is about the role of men.
Yes, sir. The role of the role of being a man in
well,
the death of yes, sir.
when my mother died, that was in 1999. My father was still alive, so I didn't have any of the responsibilities, duties, or anything. So I had grief pretty openly and freely, which I did. My mother was taken by emphysema, but that's neither here nor there. She still died. That hit me hard. I mean, we were expecting it, and sometimes that makes it worse. But 9 years later, my father succumbed to dementia, and he passed away. But that time, I was in charge of it all. I didn't have time to grieve. I wasn't. Yeah, I had to organise a funeral. I had to deal with solicitors and stuff like that. The state, all of that. I had to be calm and what's the word I'm looking for? Stable.
Yeah.
Everybody else in the family, fair enough. I mean, because I was born in '64, so I don't come from a nuclear family. Mine was very much an extended family. Even oddly enough, when we were away overseas with my dad being in the army, there was still that connection. So that was something to fall back on. But even so, I think the role of men when it comes to deaths in the family, funerals and that, we've got to be the ones who take charge. So that, especially if you're the head of the household, so that others can be allowed to grieve and then get on with their lives. We grieve last.
Yes, sir. That is what I am noticing. when my first sister died. Hey, Mama.
Hey.
When my first sister died, I was only 18. I didn't have a whole lot to worry about. I didn't have to be the you know, I had the luxury of still being a teenager that didn't have to be the rock for my family. But now that I'm older and I have, you know, my nieces and nephews who are all either around 10 or teenagers, being there for them is very, very important. I have to put my own issues with this whole situation behind me for their sake.
Yeah, the way I see it, it's kind of that thing of, if the crowd's in disarray, someone has to be calm and collected to bring in the reins of everyone.
Especially with kids involved. I don't know, some of this takes over and says, there is no time for you right now. Do it some other way, or find a different way and get everybody else from stopping crying. Because my girls were just became teenagers when their great grandfather died, and he was really close to family. He outlived it a lot longer than we expected.
Mm-hmm.
He died at CHF, and he was really close with my girls. And whenever he finally passed away, my wife was devastated. The girls were devastated. I was devastated because I got really close with him since I've been married with my wife. But the thing is, though, it's like I had to shut all that off and find a different way to direct it, because I can't have them in disarray. I can't have them upset. I got to do everything for them. So whenever my wife asked for something, I was there. When the girls asked for something, I was there, even 10 times more than I already was.
Yes, sir. And I didn't give them proper introductions, but we are joined by the lovely Base Mama and the lovely Otter Face.
Hey.
Hi,
Hello.
Hi, Face.
I actually wanted to bring in a couple of ladies to get the outside, a view from the outside.
Can I say something?
I'm sorry.
Can I say something?
Yes, sir.
I was going to say when let me check one of the names we've got here. When Jay was talking, something sprang to mind. I think when it comes to men, what can be summed down to is a saying which I'm going to misquote. I know. When all those about you are losing your head and you hold on to yours, then you will be a man, my son. I think that sums it up for us in a lot of ways.
Sir, and that is a very, very good quote, and something I think should be with a lot of people a lot of people who have to be the rock, who have to be the strong one in the situation. Otterface or Mama, is there any men you've experienced being the strong rock in a particularly uncomfortable situation?
I think it's been, well, based on when I've had losses in my family, the men have definitely been the ones who have been the really strong ones, whereas the women tend to be the ones that fall apart. With me, I always try to be like the strong one anyway. Like I try to be as strong as I can, really, because I maybe that's something to do with being like the older sibling as well in the family as well. So I've got that kind of thing I have to keep together.
Yes, ma'am.
But I think it's definitely it's definitely a thing there that almost requires the man to be the one who has to keep it together and make sure everyone else is okay.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Please continue.
No, go on.
Oh no, I despise interrupting people. So if you have more to add, please go ahead.
That was pretty much it. I'm terrible at explaining stuff like this.
Yes, ma'am. Mama, yourself, any experiences or stories?
When my brother died, it sort of created a vacuum. You realize now that there are children who need extra care. There are people, friends of who are going to suddenly experience this loss. And it's really weird because the closer you are to someone who passes, the more responsibility you feel to comfort other people. And I think when my brother died, he was the oldest kid. He was the one that, he was like the perfect big brother, and it was really hard to lose him. He was always like my best friend and my dad and my brother all at the same time. And it was a huge loss for me. I mean, like my entire insides felt hollowed out. And it was really hard to deal with that. But actually, my stepdad was there. He was my dad. I just call him my dad. He stepped in and he's like, okay, you know, when you feel that loss, you need a sense of purpose. And so he said, you have to be the person that he hoped that you would become. You have to step into this role now because, he's not there to guide you. So you have to find, you have to turn your sails and you have to find your own way and navigate by what he gave to you. And that helped a lot because it helped me to process the loss and to feel like now I had some sense of purpose, that I was going to honor him and do him justice, with all that he had given me. And I think just having my dad there to go like, look, you have to carry this torch. You have to be the legacy bearer of his name and his memory. It was a responsibility, but it was like a welcome responsibility. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Very much.
Yeah, it makes absolute perfect sense. So, sorry. I'm not laughing at you. Who flung poo is shit posting in the.
I'm trying to keep it a little light.
Naturally.
And if I could add something, something I just thought about while Baseball was talking is that it's a really weird feeling that you can only get. It's kind of like a morbid curiosity with me, experiencing a bunch of different things, whether they be good or bad. And one of the things that I found interesting is the feeling that you get when someone dies, that feeling of, damn, I can never, like when it truly sets in that you can never like talk to this person, like someone that you maybe have talked to a day ago or a week ago or something, like you just can't talk to them. Like you see their number in your phone or something and it doesn't work. Or like you see something there and like, they're gone. And it's a really weird feeling that I remember getting the most when my grandma died, because, prior to that, I basically saw her like every few weeks, I didn't go more than like a few months without seeing her or at least talking to her. And then now it's just like, oh, I can't talk to this person anymore. And it's really like, it made me sad, but at the same time, it was like it's kind of like that feeling that,
it's like something's missing.
Yeah. Like, or kind of like that thing of like how when everyone went to VidCon or something, and then they're like, oh, it's weird that we can't talk, more often or something. It's like that kind of missing piece. Like you want to interact more, but you just can't.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're on about, and that never goes away. I mean, I see things online or on the TV, and I think, oh, my mum will like that, or my dad will like that, and then kick myself because I realise I've been dead X amount of years.
That actually happened to me at VidCon. When we were there, my brother's been dead for 20 years. Okay, but while we were there, I kept turning around to go, hey, Jeff, did you hear that? And he's not here. Like it really does never go away. When you're in a situation or you see something that that person would love and you want to talk to them, that keeps them alive.
Yeah. But that, after, I would say with me, after a year or so, it didn't hurt anymore. Well, those kind of nudges. I found like it started a couple of years after my dad died. Like I said, he died because of complications due to vascular dementia. So as you can gather, his mental condition was deteriorating all the time. And sometimes, even to this day, I have dreams where I've got my father as he was before his dementia started, sitting there in his chair in our old house where we used to live, arguing with my father as he was when he was well into his dementia. It's weird.
See,
Yeah,
I've
no,
never. I'm
oh,
sorry. I've
uh,
never experienced anything like that. You know, my sister will sometimes tell me, you know what, I felt mom today. And I've just never had that. But what I will occasionally wake up from are dreams about my mother, you know, and I think that tends to happen when subconsciously I'm starting to either forget what she looks like or how she sounds. So I don't know. I think those are just kind of reminders for me to remember all that.
yeah,
Possible, yeah.
I'm not trying to sound like, a smart ass or anything like that, but I remember like I've been a skeptic for a long time, and I always try to fit in by saying other things. And like I don't remember ever believing in Santa Claus, but and I grew up in a semi-secular house type thing. Like my mom was a Christian, she said, but we never really went to church, and I had to go look answers on my own. But but when my mom passed, it was like uh, that's when I really threw me to want to be an atheist, because my reasoning was like, if there is an afterlife, what stopped me from killing myself and getting towards her? So it's like, it's one of those things that kind of like stone me up
I,
towards that stuff.
you know, I
Good
the
point.
when my first sister died when I was 18, I was still living with my mother, and she had moved out. She had moved in with her husband, and they had had a kid, and things were going great. And but she was still, at that age where she didn't want to, you know, give up mom just yet. So she called every single day. And then when she passed, of course, the call stopped. But that was probably the single most drastic change. I mean, to have something that occurred every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and just boom, just stopped. And as you were saying earlier, the dreams are something that don't go away. Still, God, 14. Oh my God, it's been 14 years. Um, I'm of course speaking of my first sister that passed, not the one that passed over the weekend, but it's been 14 years and I still have those dreams. It's just the weirdest thing.
I have flashbacks, but I also have a reason why, because I lived in the house I grew up in.
Uh,
I got that in an inheritance, and there's still triggers that happen that all of a sudden it's like I see my mom, or I think I hear my mom call my name, and whenever she's called my name, she's pissed off, of course. So then I have to like, oh shit, what I do?
As
I
I'm
don't
sorry,
have
go
that.
ahead, Batman.
I don't have that stuff when I'm awake, but I do have a few items of furniture that used to be my parents. Like there's a bureau that my mother inherited from my grandparents. They bought in the 20s, which is sitting right beside us at the moment. So yeah, I've got the physical keys there for memories, but it doesn't relate to our topic now. But I remember when I was I'd be about 8, 9 year old, when my grandfather passed away through lung cancer. But that doesn't really count because that age you don't really understand death. No, the most I remember feeling about that is I was upset because I wouldn't see him again. But it's strange how it affects you. It does change the course of your. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It changes the course of your development of your personality, even as an adult.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Has anybody, Marty? I'm sorry. Did you?
No. I was just agreeing. Please go ahead, Pooh.
Has anybody either in the hangout or the chat heard of the play/movie titled "The Rabbit Hole"?
No.
I have not.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Well,
Same.
the movie version stars oh gosh, who played Harvey Dent in the Batman trilogy? Nolan's
No.
Aaron
Aaron
Eckhart.
Eckhart. Yeah.
Okay, so it stars him and Nicole Kidman, and the premise of the movie is that they lose their 4-year-old son this happens before the movie even starts. They lose their 4-year-old son due to him running out in the street, chasing after, I think it was a dog, his dog, and he gets hit by a car. Well, the mother in this had also lost her brother from drug addiction, and her mom's like really involved in the story. But anyway, that play, because I saw the play first, had probably the best analogy I have ever heard of how you deal with the loss of somebody. And the object that's used to make the analogy is kind of like, you keep there's a brick that you keep in your pocket, and at first you notice the weight of the brick until eventually you don't, and then one day you just kind of reach into your pocket and you're like, oh yeah, that thing. It's been the best analogy ever. So I mean, if you ever even get a chance to see just the scene, it is available on YouTube. It's probably the best way to ever describe dealing with that death.
Yes, sir. I myself have the thing I had to tell my nephew, which, by the way, if you ever have a chance to console a grieving son, don't. That's a terrible joke, but man, I've known this kid since he could fit in a shoebox, and I, being the only like real like consistent man in his life, put a role on me that man, it wrecked me having to console him, and of course, me having to be in the strong, stable rock. My voice couldn't crack. I couldn't shed a tear. I couldn't, I had to show him that it's something that you can learn to live with. But it was brutal. It was it was brutal.
And you've got to show some stability to hold on to as well.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, is when it's a kid trying to go through. I remember clearly, just watching. I was watching like Dragon Ball Z or something in my room, and like I remember, because it wasn't like I woke up and my mom's dead. Like it wasn't that. It was that she wasn't in the house, but I didn't think there was a problem, because I remember her telling me the day before that she was going to take, the ex-fiance, she was going to take his nephew to a job interview at one of the casinos. So I was like, all right, she's probably just out doing that. But then I like looked around because I was bored and saw that her car was still in the garage. So I'm like, oh, well, maybe, like she went with him or whatever. So I waited, and then, no one came, and I called my aunt, who lived here at the time, and, she thought it was weird. So we just waited a bit longer, and then they came over, and then they called the police, and then the police started to look for her. And I remember it was like later that night, and I was sitting there watching TV, and they called me into the room, and they were all crying, and I was like, well, what's going on? They're like, oh, well, your mom died. And I remember like I burst into tears immediately. I thought about it, and I remember it was a really sad moment, but at the same time a really funny moment of, I went back into my room because they were trying to calm me down. And I remember Dragon Ball Z was still playing on the TV, and I'm like, Goku, I'm not in the mood for you. Like, but it is a weird thing of, like, I kind of grew up with this thing of, because after that, I had also a friend die from school, and it was kind of that thing of like, the more it happened, the less, not like I cared less, but the less it affected me, like outwardly, to the point that, by the time my uncle died, and then another person from school died, and then one of our family friends ended up killing himself and all that. Like, by the time it gets to now, like, someone can die now, and I'll be sad on the inside, but outwardly, I was like, oh, well, I mean, that sucks. Like, it kind of just doesn't affect me anymore, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but, it's kind of one of those things that just happens.
It probably does affect you, but you probably got to a point where it doesn't affect you in a negative way.
Well, of course, it's probably going to affect anybody in a negative way. I think what he's getting at, I've been saying for years, based on various experiences with loss and homelessness, that you would be surprised what you can get used to. It's one of the coolest and most disturbing things about humanity. It's that if you're exposed to something enough, you will become accustomed to it. And I think I think that's kind of what he's speaking of.
Yeah, like think medieval times, you know, literally people are dying in front of you every day, and then, you know, that becomes a very normal thing. Like, it may hurt if someone dies, but it's not going to be like some tragedy. And, you know, though I miss a lot of the people that have died in my life and stuff like that, it's not like I can't live without them. I mean, the way I rationalize it is, I'd rather them, you know, not have to suffer than, you know, continue living. Because I know that a lot of stuff, the people that died, you know, were suffering a lot of, you know, issues and stuff like that. You know, my mom died from her ex, so she was doing problems with that. You know, people have killed themselves because of, you know, mental problems or, you know, physical problems or whatever. So, you know, I'd rather them at least be spared the pain than to have to live, you know, years and years.
Yes, sir.
Dealing with stuff like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, Batman.
Just pardon myself. I burped.
Oh, sorry. I couldn't tell if that was you trying to speak or not through that weird accent you got. You should learn how to talk like proper people, like Americans.
Well, I can if I really put my mind to it, but I just can't.
I was just going to ask the two ladies if they had anything else they'd like to say. Otterface is being uncharacteristically quiet.
So I'm just listening. Because I mean, when it comes to like loss, right, the only recently anyway, the major loss for me anyway, which is like in comparison not really major, but like was the loss of my family dog that I grew up with, which I put on Twitter like I think after it happened, and it's just one of those things that like, because I moved out of, because when I moved out of my parents' house, like I looked at my dog and I was gonna like, I knew this was going to be the last time I saw him, but like at the same time I was thinking, oh, maybe it would be, but then it all sort of happened, and it was one of those where like you knew that that it was going to happen, like you were waiting for that, because I was waiting for that moment where we were going to be like, yeah, this is going to be the day, because he was so old, his legs were just giving way all the time, and you know, like some dogs just know that it's their time. It was just, yeah, but at the same time, it's still like really caught me off guard. I remember, like, I think it was in the morning, I just got a phone call and it was like, oh, it's bad news and all that, and I mean, I'm sure everyone knows this, but like when it comes to like pets dying, it is just like, it's not just an animal dying, it's a member of your family dying, isn't it? Especially when it's an animal that like that you've grown up with.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I really regret, is because I wasn't actually there, because they had to bring to the vet to put him down. Like, that's the only regret I ever had, that I wasn't there. And because technically he was my dog, because I was the one who, like, for 2 years was like, can I have a dog? Can I have a dog?
You don't want to be that. I'm sorry, but Otterface, I've had to put an animal down, and it's one of the grueling and hardest things I've
the thing is,
watch my family members, pass. It's just that
it's gut wrenching.
Yes, it's especially when you get there.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I went to pick him up when it was called Max. I know, original name for a dog. I went to pick him up as a little puppy, so and it was one of those where like I wish I could have been there. I was there at the start, and I wanted to be there at like the end. But and so that happened, and then a month later, my boyfriend's dog died. And I was there for that one. So I was, because I wanted to be there for my boyfriend because this was his dog that was that he'd grown up with. So I wanted to be there for him, and yeah, it like you said, it's one of those things where like it happens so fast, but it's one of those where like I was happy that I was there for those last moments, and
yeah. No matter how many people in my life die at this point, like a pet dying to me, I'm still not used to that. I remember my pet bird died. Like he died in his sleep, so it wasn't like painful or anything. But I remember I was bawling my eyes out because that's something I just wasn't used to growing up. Like when my pets died, I was never near them. And, it was something like, they were my pet, but they stayed at the family house, so I wasn't near them all the time, so it wasn't as bad. This is a bird I literally played with like every day, and I even saved because it was hit by a bus, and I nursed it back to health. And I love this damn thing, and then it died, and I was like, oh, why?
It's
that's something I can't get used to.
It's amazing how hard the death of a pet hits you. Early last year, I'm on with my second cat now, but my first cat, I'd had him about 7 years, and he, within the space of a week, he lost all his weight, lost all of his energy, so I took him to the vet, and he had a large lump on his side, couldn't be operated on, so he basically had to be put down there and then, and for a solid month after that, I just couldn't be bothered with anything. I think basically, I put it right the best way. You felt like you'd been hollowed out. It's it's incredible how hard it hits you when a pet dies.
Yeah, I mean, when I was told that my dog had died, it's the first time I've in a while really I've seen my dad cry. I've heard my dad cry, and yeah, it's one of those things. Like, it's not just an animal. It's not just an animal that's just in your life. It's this family member, isn't it?
Yes, or
Yep.
yes, ma'am. Maybe any Batman, you said you had when your father passed, there was a lot of funeral arrangements you had to do.
Yeah, that having to be that responsible person and having to be the person in charge, it takes your mind off it. It keeps all that grief away, but at the same time, you're consciously trying to keep that grief away because you've got to be the person in charge. You've got to be the one to make the arrangements, for the funeral, for messages out to family and friends. You've got to be the one to take care of paperwork, the estate, everything like that, and you just don't have time to grieve. And generally, you find, especially within families, it is one of the male family members who will take charge. Generally,
Yes, sir. I didn't plan to get such a large a large group of people on. Chambers would like to come on. Keklof, would you mind stepping down? Would that be all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, Keklof. Do you want to shill yourself?
Yeah. I currently have YouTube channel, Tech Local. There's no videos on it yet. It'll probably be posted up in about a week or two. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at Second Krieg, SECONDKREIG.
Well, if you want to type it into the chat, that way people can use it to get to your Twitter and as well as your channel.
Yeah, because I think channels don't show up when you have no videos on them, but I'll have video up within a couple weeks. So.
Yes, sir. All right, man. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for, pardon my stutter, but making room for Chambers. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure she does too.
Yeah, no problem. See you guys later.
Take care.
See you, man.
All right. So, does anybody have a line to Chambers? Because all I got is Discord.
Hold on. I'll see if I have.
I do believe I can find her.
Yeah, here we go.
Oh, cool. You have Chambers. That's awesome.
Yep, I've dropped the Hangout link.
All right. Thank you much, Batman. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right. So, did you do it through the Twitter?
Yeah, I did it through Twitter. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. All right. I just wanted to make sure she knew where to get the link. All right. All right. So Mama, is there anything you'd like to add? You've been uncharacteristically quiet as well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of. I've lost a lot of people, so I'm trying to consider the roles that men played. I think when you're making arrangements, Batman's right. You do need somebody who is willing to put that grief on the shelf for a minute and be practical about this, because funeral expenses can get very rapidly expensive. And it sounds crappy to say, but you do need somebody who will, negotiate and stuff like that. Because, like, let's say you have a funeral plan that's like $60,000, you can burn through that super fast. So you have to be able to provide for, a plot purchase if you're doing burial, and other arrangements like that can get really costly. And you're almost in a catch-22 because you're highly emotional. You care very much about this person. You want them to have the best of everything, except they're dead and they don't care. So what I would say is, make sure that whatever you arrange, that it's very to the man. You know what I mean? It's something that they would appreciate, that they would, they would feel honored by it. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be a huge deal. To harken back to when my brother died, it was just, we just had, a time where we all just took a minute to do just a couple minutes each to just talk about a memory that we had of him. And I think that was better than any of the organ stuff and eulogies and all that stuff, where we just kind of sat around and said, my favorite thing about him was. And that I think helped. That helped his family to cope with the loss. It helped his friends to cope with the loss. It gave us a lot of memories to know that he had an impact on other people's lives that we didn't even know about. Was a big deal. And I know this is going to sound really, really weird, but because you have kids that you have to be concerned about, if that's something you want to do, I would recommend videotaping it.
Yes, ma'am. That is
so you can keep it.
Yeah. That is a very beautiful sentiment. Thank you for sharing that. We are joined by the also lovely Chambers of my heart.
It is.
I do notice you requested to come on. Was there something specific you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, because I said in my comment section, it's like I lost my sister 5 years ago, and every now and then it's so hard to talk about. I'm really sorry, man, about your sister.
I will be okay. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not unbearable. I've always dealt with a lot of this stuff on my own. So, and now I feel very fortunate enough that should I need to, I have literally 1,000 people I could talk to at any point. So I mean, it's doable. I will learn to live with it as I have plenty of other things. But thank you for your concern.
Call me crazy, but Marty, I do sense something in that sense, but hear it in your tone, like you still have that numbness in you. Like it's still a shock.
Actually, this is just how I normally sound.
Okay.
Sorry.
He's not lying.
Yeah,
Well, shit.
I'm the most boring guy on YouTube.
The most boring guy on YouTube with
Joking apart,
with
I would
about
say-
30 times the subs I have. You son of a bitch.
joking apart, Marty, I would say you always sound like the most self-controlled person on YouTube.
Thank you. That's actually taken a lot of work and discipline. I can owe my grandfather for that. Now, this is actually something I wanted to bring up anyway, so thank you for the good segue, Batman. When I think about what a man is, just like on the whole, what a man is, I think about my grandfather. This man, stern, direct, always on point. He served in the Navy. He worked a factory job supporting a family of 6 for 30 years, retired to a lakeside house in the middle of nowhere. I mean, this guy, and of course, very, very good morals. And as I said, very stern. So I can remember a fair amount of deaths when I was younger. And by fair amount, I mean about 3. And I try and emulate him to those deaths. For instance, my aunt, my great aunt, a few others, but I try and do what I think he would have done and how he did. He was always, always very supportive, always very, very strong. If someone needed a shoulder to cry on, it was his shoulder they were crying on because he wouldn't blink. And I try and live up to that high bar that he set. So there's also that role in that a man would take in the death of a family.
Yeah, something advice I want to give you too, because this can happen with my sister's funeral. You're gonna have people that's possibly gonna want to start drama or something. Hopefully not.
Already
But
has.
okay, well here's my advice, and it's gonna sound really horrible, but I assure you it's gonna serve you well in the long run. Anybody who wants to fight, bicker, start shit right now doesn't need to be at the funeral. I'm dead serious. Me and my sister who passed away, we shared a biological mother, and I guess she either had a boyfriend or was engaged. I don't know what the full story is behind it. But these people try to show up at the funeral, and all they really wanted to do was fight. So when it came to these people, we had to alert Pacific others saying, hey, we don't want them here. We don't want to fight. I mean, we had crazy people try to hold my sister's body, for God's sakes. So my dad had to call a friend in the state where she passed away, like, hey, can you please go secure this until I'm able to fly out? So my advice is, if you got people starting drama and shit, they don't need to be at the funeral, dude. That's just, I mean, that sounds horrible, but the last thing that you need is a shit fest breaking out.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly
Sounds
on that.
horrible that people start that.
Oh yeah, there's always that though.
Sorry, Ben, what you were saying?
I would agree with James wholeheartedly on that. A funeral it's a thing of respect. You don't want drama there. I mean, when I had my father's funeral, I mean, he had friends who I could not stand, who I absolutely hated. And I found myself in the unenviable position of having to be nice and pleasant to these people. They were there and they showed their respects. I wasn't about to start any drama at my dad's funeral or even at the wake afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about respect, even the wake. They're the last places to have drama.
Yes, sir.
It's amazing though that it doesn't matter. Like, at least with my family, how many funerals I've been to, there's always been some petty bullshit going on with like who gets this, who gets that. You know, I've just never understood that mess.
One thing.
Well, go ahead.
One thing I noticed, and this has kind of stuck with me over the years. Speaking of my first sister that passed, during the whole thing and for months after, there was this contest, and I hate to use that word, but that's the only thing that could be used to describe it. There was this contest over who was more important to my late sister, who lost more in her death, who was the most begrieved. And the reason this sticks with me so much is because I was always deemed the one who lost the least. I I I didn't lose as much as my other sisters. I didn't lose as much as her friends. The only ones that I could gladly tip my uh, 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 you know bow to in terms of losing more was my mother and my sister's husband. But with my other sisters and with my sister's friends, um, every time I felt like I needed to grieve or like talk to them about what was going on, the conversation immediately shifted to how they were more important and their grief was more important.
Wow.
That's incredibly
Yeah.
childish of them.
Very much so. It took, and here's the funny thing. The man who lost, the man who lost the most, her husband, uh, was was the most accepting of my grief. There was no contest with him. We both lost my sister, and even though he was, of course, more intimate um, with her, he was completely and totally ready to be the person that I could grieve to, and he was ultimately the one I ended up grieving to most.
Well, in grief, there is no competition. And
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to adjust myself. My back is killing me.
No, you're fine. And that's something too, like when it came to my sister, because I mean, I'm not going to go into it, obviously, but she caused like a lot of trouble for my family. But at the same time, we all loved her. We had each different relationships with her, but it was like never a contest, like who lost the most. Now, if I want to say who lost the most, I'd peg that to my dad because of the shit involved with our biological mother and just the crap that he had to do with my sister. But otherwise than that, we didn't say, oh, well, I lost the most. No, we just all grieved because, like, oh my God, she's fucking gone. We don't even have the full circumstances of why she left. So, I mean, I don't see why people need to make it a competition. I just don't fucking get that.
Nor do I. And it's still something I don't get to this day. I still to this day do not understand why there was the grief Olympics, as I actually started calling it after I started hanging out with this crowd and and I heard the term oppression Olympics for the first time. I said that's a perfect way to describe what my family and my sister's friends were doing. But the uh, you know what? I'm actually trying not to make this about me. I have a hard time because of this stuff still being, it pretty much happened over the weekend. So I'm trying not to talk about myself a whole lot, but it seems to be coming out, and I apologize.
No,
Marty,
you're
if you want to,
fine.
that's
Marty,
fine.
Yeah,
you're
dude.
fine.
But yeah,
I mean, you got a support system,
Yeah.
in this little community of ours. So, I mean, feel free to talk about
Yeah, if you need to.
yourself
talk.
all you need, man.
The only Olympics we get to deal with is a special.
Yeah, and this is your channel as well, so
yeah, but I've never been
talk
big
about
on.
it.
Yeah, but I've never been big on self promotion. I of course, the Marty character that I do in my videos, he's an egocentric asshat, but but the actual me, I try not to be that guy, and but anyway, we are coming up on 5 minutes to the hour, and is there anything anybody else would like to add, sort of like final statements, or
Can't think
Oh,
of anything offhand.
go ahead.
please go ahead, Batman.
I can't think of anything offhand. Apart from it, grief, it affects everybody in very different ways. Sometimes, with one of my cousins, he didn't seem to be grieving at all. I remember a friend of mine who worked with him saying it was a full year later. He was at work, and they were just going off for the lunch break, and he just, slumped against the wall, slid down the wall, burst into tears. He got all over his dad. Yeah, that was a full year later.
Yeah, I mean, it just like. Go ahead, Batman. Sorry.
So it just affects people at very different stages. Some people can recover from it quickly. Some people, it doesn't hit them until a long time later.
Yeah, I know that is true. I had my my younger brother when my sister passed away. He just got like numb to it and just like in a way shut down because it just. And some people are like that. And something too, like when it comes to the funeral, is you don't have to listen to everyone's demands, but try to do something that also like honors everybody. Like for example, when my sister passed away, me and my siblings hadn't seen her like maybe 1 to 2 years, like physically. So when this nut job of a family tried to get her cremated, we're like, no, you need to bring her body down here, so we can at least like see her off proper. So I mean that's something too. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you how to do your funeral. That's not my place. But it's just a thought to kind of like honor everybody for those who possibly had a relationship with her and probably didn't physically see her and kind of want to see her off proper. I mean, I don't know what the situation is, but yeah.
There's also something else that they need to be aware about with grief, that it can mask itself as something else and you won't realize it. And you have to be wary of that.
Yeah.
When my mom passed, it masked itself whenever to an addiction to a video game. I used to be really big into World of Warcraft, and I'd lose myself because I didn't want to face reality. And it took me a long time to realize that's what my grief was. Is I'd spend most of my time on that game. I'd ignore my, not all my responsibilities, but most of my extra time I'd be on that rather than doing other things I should have been doing. And you just need to be self-aware of. If you feel, I understand right now it feels like okay to bury it, and it may well be the best interest to do bury it for now, but you don't want to bury it forever because then it will change to something that you can't, you won't realize until it's gone. It's already past. You have to reflect on it and as part of as part of regret.
Yeah. And something too, because Bloodwing posted something, so I've been watching the chat a little bit. Marty, listen to Papa. At some point you have to deal with you, and that's fine. We all understand. That is true. I mean, because you can only bury stuff for so long. Like for me, I'm kind of taking a break from everything. Yeah, I'm hearing about on Twitter, but there's stuff that I have to deal with, like for me, and you have to get to the point where you have to sit down, tell everybody to kind of like, you need to chill out. I need to deal with my own stuff now. Because at that point, if you don't ever deal with stuff, you're either going to break down or you're going to become really numb, and you do not want to get to that point, like, at all.
Oh,
that is very true.
I completely and totally understand that. I would never. I don't allow myself to not feel things. What I do to make sure my feelings are well regulated is I actually schedule times to feel. As ridiculous as that sounds to anybody on, from the outside looking in, it actually works. If I need to cry, I find a time to sit down and watch surprise homecoming videos from soldiers, or if I need to, be angry at something, I schedule a time to listen to loud, angry, heavy metal music. And, any emotion that I need to feel or anything I need to do, I try and find some time to schedule it in, and it works for me.
Look, dude, you're a Vulcan.
You told me that whenever you feel the need to be angry, you just look at streams that I'm on.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I'm not repeating it.
Speak English.
Speak American.
I feel chastised.
Mission
I didn't
accomplished.
touch you.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and get going, and appreciate you bringing me in, Marty.
Always a pleasure.
My sincerest condolences to you on this. I actually felt a little bad yesterday because I hadn't heard yet. and I was shit posting you in one of the chats. I was just like,
No,
oh,
no, no, no,
shit.
no. Business as usual is the best thing. Honestly,
No, that's cool. No, I
yeah.
get it, man. So, but yeah, dude, you know, I'm with everybody else, man. If you need to, bounce some things off of somebody, man, I'm totally here for you.
I should be okay, but thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
One
All
thing
right.
that really helps with grief and that is if you know you've got people around who you can rely on to just talk to from time to time, whether they're in real life or online. And let's face it, Marty, you've got that.
And I
You
wasn't
know,
finished. And I wasn't finished, Batman. I had one more thing I had to tell Marty.
You shouldn't pause so
Wow,
long.
Batman.
Look, Batman, let me introduce you to a little concept called Southern speak. We do it slow. We take our time.
Yes, my wife is really bad about that too.
But Marty, just
Yes, sir.
just to kind of put a smile on your face. See you later.
I do love that sound effect. I do love that sound effect. His poo shtick works. It really does. All right, so we are at the hour. So I will do some send offs from left to right. Base Mama, is there anything you'd like to say?
Just take care of yourselves and take care of each other, and value the relationships that you have while you can show the people in your life that you love them. Show them. That's it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Chambers?
My advice would be, I mean, help people when you can, but you also have to remember that you have to take care of yourself, because when you break down, that's when things really go to shit. But like I said, take care of others when you can, and be sure you take care of yourself. That's very important.
Beautiful. I'm so sorry. I you know what? I will learn your name by heart at some point. But my friend with the anime,
CZ.
CZ. I
Yeah.
am so sorry. I am
Darcy,
terrible with
but
names.
everybody calls it CZ to be easier.
I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. I am
Don't
so
worry about it. It's all right.
But
I can
CZ?
think of is that your nephew. You're gonna have to keep an extra eye on him, especially being so young. He's gonna need a lot of attention.
Well, truth be told, my two nephews, one is 15 and the other is 18. He's actually in the United States Army. But
Wow.
yeah, no. I'm 32. So my nephews range from fully grown, or my nieces and nephews range from fully grown to tiny babies. So
Well, as long as they're not one for anything, then you should have plenty of support chain to if you ever need anything, you can just reach out and they'll be there.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Otter, is there anything you'd like to add?
All I can say is, you just cherish the, I mean, everyone knows this, but you cherish the good times and all that, and you just remind everyone of, all the good times that you had with her, and all I'm trying to think of the words. Just think of all the nice times you had with her, and yeah.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I'm terrible at these. That's all I can say. That's the best way. That's the thing I would do anyway.
Yes, ma'am. And of course, last but not least, the Dark Knight himself, Batman.
Well, everybody's saying such profound stuff. I'll give it a go. I've found this to be, this might sound corny, but I found it to be true in my life. If you share your good times with people, when you have bad times, you'll find that there'll be a lot of people around to help pick you up.
Yes, sir. That was actually beautiful and a lovely place to end this at. I would like to thank everybody for showing up, both the people in the stream itself and the people in the chat, and a very special thank you for Kekloaf for showing up and stepping down for Chambers. He's still in the chat, so if you want to throw him a sub, I would greatly appreciate that. And as always, have yourselves a nice day.